Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to kind of a special edition of the ECH Patreon exclusive bonus podcast, extra plus, super max, whatever, whatever we decided to call this. We'll have a name for it come the new year. That's kind of our plan right now. But we are making this kind of available to everybody. One, just so everybody can get an idea of what this podcast is kind of like. We address, really league-wide stuff. It's not so much focused on the Kraken, really. And, we also thought everybody could use some hockey content right now because there's no hockey. Now, there wasn't going to be some hockey during the Christmas break, but it got extended, RJ, this break without the NHL. And kind of interesting how it all went down.
Absolutely. I mean, we were talking, a week ago about how, it'd probably be the wise and prudent thing to do for the NHL to just kind of shut this down before the holiday break and, just have some extra time. Like there were clearly, active cases going on and spread going on. You figured just shut it down. And well, I mean, we got there eventually, didn't we?
Yeah.
It wasn't the easy way, but that's the NHL for you. It gives me a chance to bring up one of my favorite Churchill quotes, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here because just from memory, but talking about the Americans entering the war, like, the Americans can always be relied upon to do the right thing once every other option has been exhausted. And that's kind of where we're at with the NHL. Finally, postponing all the games going into the holiday break, except leaving one game remaining.
Yes.
One game between the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Vegas Golden Knights. And I love that they kept this one game because it just highlights like everything that was wrong with not shutting it down. You had multiple Golden Knights players entering COVID protocol day of. You had, I believe it was Lightning coach John Cooper and like another player entering COVID protocol the day of. Clearly some spread going on here, but the game went on as scheduled. The Lightning won 4-3. And that sends the NHL into the holiday break. But I have a question for you, Dylan. Should they have just awarded the Stanley Cup in that game? Like these are the last two teams standing. They're barely standing. I mean, that's kind of what the Stanley Cup final is anyway. Should they have just awarded the Stanley Cup there? And also because we all know that's where this is headed. It's going to be like a Lightning Golden Knights Cup final. We're going to see this again in June. Should they have just awarded it there?
RJ, you say this every year about the Golden Knights, though. Oh, they're just gonna sweep through the West. They're so good. They're so deep, and then they blow it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything different about this year's team maybe that might, I don't know, some key difference compared to previous years? Some kind of player they have now?
Their IR list is far better than it's been in years past. I'll give you that.
Fair enough.
We'll see what maybe some of those players do when they eventually come back after being out of hockey for a very, very long time. Yeah, I mean, gosh, it's insane how the NHL has handled all this. Because even still, they're not totally taking our suggestion of just copy and paste like a week and a half, 2 weeks into the Olympic break, which we'll get to in a moment. The Olympic news. Just because like this, okay, you postponed already more games than you had still scheduled. So it's not like, really getting rid of all these games is doing that much for you. You were really backed into the corner there. And we're just going to be back to playing hockey in what, like 5 days? 4 days? Like it's
4 days.
Yeah, 4 days. Omicron going to be like over and done by then? Probably not. Like you're just going to end up in the same situation where for the rest of this year, probably going into, the new year, you're going to be postponing games for some teams. You're going to have star players all over the place out of games, which, is less than ideal as you're trying to get fans to go back to games. Already that's now hard because you have this new variant going crazy. You have, in Canada, right? You have limitations on how many people can be in an arena, all that stuff. And then it's like, oh yeah, come to this awesome Oilers game, for instance. McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, and Draisaitl are all out with COVID, but that just means it's going to be a closer game. Like, come on, you know what I mean? Like, I don't get it. I don't know why they didn't just say, you know what, let's really try to get a handle on this, see if we can, kind of outlast Omicron if we can, get everybody separated from each other, enjoy the holiday, enjoy the new year, we'll just postpone all these games until the Olympic break, where we can catch up on everything. It's not going to be a travel nightmare. You're not going to have teams playing 4 games in 5 or 6 days. But as you said, it's the NHL. There's why would you do the thing that makes the most sense? It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, we got there eventually, and it'll be interesting to see on the 26th. Because everyone's coming in, everyone's going to do the testing, and I feel like they're just kind of walking into that, hoping for the best. And on the 26th, if everyone comes in, tests, everyone's positive, then I don't know, where do we go from there? But keep an eye on that for an eventful Boxing Day in the NHL.
For sure, it's going to be very interesting, and it'll be interesting to see if they, change testing and all of that stuff just to try to get through it. Take the NFL approach of see no COVID, hear no COVID, speak no COVID. Which, it's
updated protocol.
Yeah, updated protocol. We're just going to try to act like it doesn't exist. That's the smart way to handle any sort of contagion, probably. It's certainly the most U.S. military in a movie way of handling it, that's for sure. In any sort of blockbuster movie. Let's just handle it the worst way possible. It'll be great. But, we talked about you could push all those games back to the Olympic break, which is 1,000% doable now because they did announce that they're not going to the Olympics.
Yes, and we kind of saw this coming, but official announcement is out now. And I think there was a lot of disappointment, around the league, mostly the players, just that this isn't going to happen. And that's kind of been my main takeaway also, is just that for a lot of players, this was kind of their chance and their window. And, it will be disappointing as just a hockey fan to not be able to see that, but obviously completely necessary and the no-brainer choice right now.
Yeah, I still think maybe you could have done something where you left it up to the players individually. For the players that really care about it and they really, they want to assume the risk of going, potentially contracting it, and then being stuck in China for 5 weeks. I get that would be less than ideal if, say, Steven Stamkos goes and you're the Lightning and he tests positive and he's gone for 5 weeks, basically for the rest of the regular season or most of it, and you're just kind of out Steven Stamkos. That would suck. But, given how many players had already expressed, either disinterest in going because of that or were obviously hesitant about it, I still think there was maybe room there between the league and the Players Association to leave it open for guys that, maybe haven't had a chance in the past to go and this might be their last chance, or bubble guys that normally wouldn't be able to make teams, but because a couple people are deciding not to go, they can go. Or as we had talked about, some of the teams, some of the countries that don't normally maybe have a shot, maybe if they can get all their NHLers to go while other, bigger countries don't get as many, maybe that evens the playing field a little, makes things interesting. But at the end of the day, I mean, this is what the NHL wanted all along. They didn't want to have to send the players to the Olympics. They don't want to lose, potential injuries to anybody. They don't want to lose them for that amount of time for something that, ultimately doesn't help their bottom line.
Yeah, and it's the cleanest solution too. I mean, you talk about having some players be able to go, if they want to, and while I think that would have been good for some of the players that wanted to go, I think it also helps, given how many players that we heard from that were hesitant about that sort of thing and didn't want to go. It also takes a lot of the pressure off of them, not having that, well, are you going to go? Are you not? And then, because if the option's still available to them, do you not, want to play for your country enough? It removes all those questions and they just don't have to deal with it, which, is nice for any player who had any hesitation about that.
Right. Do you think this is going to lead to some sort of return of the World Cup?
I do. Not, maybe not next year, but I think certainly the NHL is going to try and get some sort of best on best tournament going, because one, it's a huge moneymaker, and two, there just hasn't been one in a while. I think there's enough appetite, especially since people were so excited over the Olympics. I think the opportunity is certainly there we'll need to have COVID more in the rear view mirror, obviously, before starting to plan that sort of thing. But I do think we'll see something like that maybe in a couple of years' time.
Yeah, I think so too. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of formats they go with this time around. Obviously,
Yeah.
got a little creative last time with things. Uh, it would be interesting. But that's kind of it for league news. Obviously, not much going on this
Mhm.
week with all the postponements, with the holiday break. Um, but we thought it was a good opportunity for us because we've been so focused on the Kraken, trying to do our best to cover them. Really, break. We've been doing the post games after every game, breaking down each game. That kind of keeps us from watching things around the league. Kind of focusing even on the off days, right? You're there at every practice. You're there doing all that stuff. It takes time away from looking at the league as a whole. And so one of the things we do on this Patreon exclusive podcast is kind of that's our opportunity to look at stuff and look around the league and talk about the big stories and stuff of the past week. But we haven't had an opportunity really to just look at how this year is going.
Yep.
Who's doing well? Who's maybe disappointing a little, like the Kraken, if there's anybody that's in that same boat. Who the statistical leaders are. I briefly glanced at them. I'll keep my eye on them kind of throughout, and there's certainly been some surprising things this year. So some surprising names in certain categories. So I think this is the perfect opportunity while the league is on pause for us to look at the league as a whole and kind of just give some thoughts about what we're seeing. So RJ, let's just start with standings. I think that's probably the
Mhm.
safest, easiest place to start. We can talk about that. Let's kind of go division by division. The entire world seems to always want to go east to west on these sorts of things, only because league offices are always on the East Coast. It's where all the important people live for some reason. I don't know why. But we'll go ahead and follow suit just because it's easy, and that way we can also build up to the Pacific Division, our home division. It'll be fun. So we'll start with the Atlantic Division, RJ. Anything stand out to you when you kind of look at the standings for the Atlantic Division?
I guess the first thing that stands out to me is Detroit being as high
Mm-hmm.
up as they are.
Yeah.
Um, they talked about wanting to be a little more competitive this year, and it's a kind of a longer term rebuild. But they've had some younger guys, like Lucas Raymond that have stepped up, and yeah, I mean, sitting in that four spot right now, fifth as far as points percentage. But I think we all kind of expected them to be toward the bottom of the standings when the season started, and they've been a surprise. How about you?
Yeah, Detroit is kind of the obvious one. Buffalo not being last, I think also
Mhm.
is something that, kind of stands out to me. Um, I really thought Ottawa was going to be better this year. I thought they were going to kind of be able to kind of take a step forward, similar to what Detroit's doing, where it was kind of like, okay, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, for us. We've been going through the rebuild. So a little surprised by, Ottawa. Montreal is completely unsurprising to me. I know, we talked kind of before the season. I think a lot of people knew that the run to this cup final last year was uh, probably not a sustainable thing. Some turnover on that team in the off season. Obviously, being without Carey Price for much of this year, contributes to them not being
And
great.
Shea Webb.
And Shea Weber, obviously, yeah, that's a huge loss too. So, but I will say, Detroit, they're going to get leapfrogged by Boston. Boston's got 5 games in hand. You look at Detroit again, not a perfect statistic, but just looking at goal differential, -16. It's
Mhm.
it's hard to sustain success when you got a goal differential like that for any long period of time. Otherwise, no surprise. Tampa at the top, Toronto's up there. Can't wait to see how they lose in the first round of the playoffs this year. Should be fun.
Gonna be exciting. Probably to Florida.
Yeah, which would make sense, right? Like I could totally see that happening. I don't
Yeah.
think there'd be a lot of surprises there. But over to the Metropolitan Division, I mean, Carolina seems unbeatable right now.
They really do. And they've just been playing really well, and even going back to kind of the last couple seasons, just the way that they play, in a fun manner too. I
Mm-hmm.
love watching how they play, especially their power play. So much puck and player movement. It's great. But yeah, it's going to be really hard to take them down. I mean, um, let's see, 741 save percentage. That is tops in the NHL. Um,
Points
Yeah, I mean, what
percentage.
more can
Yeah.
points percentage? What did I say?
Save percentage. I'm like, that's a pretty terrible save percentage,
Oh,
RJ.
okay. Yeah, holiday break getting to
Yeah.
us all.
Yeah, no, but yeah, it's incredible what they're doing. I don't see, given the formatting for the playoffs, like this team is going to be in the Eastern Conference Final. Like
Sure, sure feels that way.
it would be very hard. I know Washington is keeping pace with them from a points per standpoint and stuff, and even again looking at goal differential, they're kind of there with Carolina. It's obvious that this is kind of a two-team division. I know the Rangers are there. We'll get to them in a second, but I just don't think Washington's quite got the team Carolina does. They don't have the depth, and I certainly don't think come playoff hockey time they'd be able to keep up with Carolina. But speaking of the Rangers, they felt like they were a playoff team. Obviously, at the end of last season, they're in a playoff spot now, but I don't know. I feel like they're more so where they are just because of the division they play in rather than because this team is, this legitimate.
Mm-hmm. I mean, last season they were one of those teams that, the points, didn't show. They were better than what the points showed, it felt like. And now maybe it's kind of the other way around this season. These things average out, whether it's over the course of a couple seasons or what have you. But yeah, the Rangers, have an impressive record, but I don't know. You sense some kind of cracks beneath the surface there.
Yeah, I mean, I got to think most of this is just Shesterkin. Like,
although they have been without him for the last little while.
Yeah, they have been, but I still feel like, I mean, he's been so lights out when he's in. Like, he is just absolutely unbeatable. Probably playing the best of any goaltender around right now, or at least when he was in. So I think that helped them. But yeah, I mean, they are getting some production from guys that in the past have disappointed, and then anytime you get guys like Chris Kreider, 18 goals, like, go figure. that helps, I guess.
Oh, for sure.
Otherwise, I mean, rest of the division, not too many surprises, except for, I guess, the Islanders down at the bottom, but even they've kind of got reasons for that.
Yeah, they do. I mean, when you start the season off on such a long road trip and, with the COVID issues as well, it's just been so difficult on them. I mean, it's about as rough of a start as you can have circumstantially, maybe that we've ever seen. I don't know. Do you think that they are going to turn it around? I mean, they've done a little bit better recently, but they're, still haven't gotten into that maybe longer winning streak that we maybe thought we'd see to have them get back in it.
The one thing that concerns me, and we know how good they are come playoff time, and come that kind of grind it out, we're going to wear you out in a playoff series, all that kind of stuff. We're going to make sure to target all your broken ribs all the time. But it's the one thing that makes me pause, even though they have, 3, 4, 5 games in hand on some of the other teams in their division, where the goal's going to come from. Like, they're just not scoring. And I don't see really anything on this roster that's going to completely change that around compared to years previously, right? Like, yes, guys are kind of in a slump on this team right now, but at the same time, they lost Jordan Eberle to the Kraken. They didn't replace him with anybody. Like, that was just, a 20-plus goal scorer out of your lineup just disappears. You don't have anybody to fill that spot. I just think it's one of those teams where they're kind of top heavy. You know who's going to do the damage. You can then play matchups on that. Control Barzell as much as you can. Get guys like Brock Nelson out of the way. Like how to play the Islanders. And I feel like they're not doing anything, and I don't know that they have the roster to kind of, play around that.
And what would hurt you with them in the past was also just the depth scoring that they had, where it wasn't always the case that you could try and take out the top guys, but you'd have guys lower in the lineup that would step up. I mean, even those grinding lines that would score sometimes, and it just hasn't been the case. I mean, you've got certain guys like, Anthony Beauvillier, only 4 goals, through 24 games. You want to see that be better. Barzell's still generating plenty of offense, but 5 goals. Oliver Wahlstrom, has done well to step up, but like, how much can you really ask of, 21-year-old winger there? The goals just have to start coming from some of those guys that are maybe a little bit snake bitten or just kind of maybe having to be relied upon too much for offense.
Yeah. I mean, what happened to Josh Bailey, man?
I know, right? There was talk of the Kraken taking him instead of Eberle.
What?
What a smokescreen that was.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I don't know. We didn't put much stock into that when it
No.
was happening. All right, so moving on to the Western Conference, a little bit more familiar territory for us. Looking at the Central Division, Minnesota. Did I not say that cutting the dead weight of Parise and Suter, buying out those contracts, was going to work out beautifully for this team, or what?
I mean, you did say that. We'll see when they actually have to face the cap implications next season. They're not really fully paying for it at the moment. This is the year that they're going to be okay. But they were definitely a surprise team last season,
Mm-hmm.
and I think this season they're showing that, yeah, in fact, they were legit.
Yeah, I mean, they're just scoring like crazy. And I think that's the big thing. They are getting so many goals from depth guys on their team. They've got 4 guys double digit goal totals for this year already. Like that's pretty
That's a lot.
impressive, you know. And then you still got guys like Matt Zuccarello who missed some time and he's at 8 goals. So you're getting the production from the guys that you want to get the production from, and you're getting some depth scoring. Like you just look down the list and it's like everybody, including like all of their defensemen, have 3+ goals. Like
Yeah.
like everybody's just scoring, total team effort, and it's like, well, that's why this team is winning. Like it's kind of hard to lose in that situation. They're getting decent goaltending, nothing great out of like Cam Talbot and stuff, but it's goaltending that you can win with, and that's I think
Mhm.
most important right now when you're scoring the way they're scoring.
Absolutely. When you play that way, in front of your goaltending, you just need to be good enough.
Hmm.
And certainly when you're scoring that much. I'm trying to look for their team shooting percentage. Do you have it?
uh 11.1.
Okay. That's
That's pretty
that's pretty
good.
good. That is pretty good.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, you got John Merrill rocking 3 goals already this year. That's
You're doing something right when
you're
that's happening.
exactly, things are going well, and watching them in the couple games against the Kraken that we've seen, it kind of makes sense why they're scoring the way they are. They've kind of figured out a nice way of attacking the slot, getting guys open in the slot, drawing defenders away, maybe behind the net or into the corners, opening things up, and then just putting themselves in good situations to score, high danger chances, and taking advantage of them when they get them. And
Yeah.
I mean, like that's just textbook what you want to do playing hockey. Like it's
Yep. The
it can be
movement, the
that simple.
creativity. Yeah.
Looking at the rest of the division, Colorado, expect them to move up a little. They've got a couple games in hand on people. That team probably still going to end up tops on the division. Probably end
Yeah. I
up in the
think so.
Western Conference Final. You got to think once everybody comes back healthy. Obviously, play a long time without McKinnon. McCarr's been on COVID. Like they've been hit by things. That being said, Nazem Kadri's just holding down the fort, being awesome this year. Go figure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like that scoring output. Like, I certainly didn't see that coming, but he has absolutely stepped up with other guys out. Weren't we talking about the Avs potentially leaving him unprotected
Mm-hmm.
and all this stuff after yet another playoff suspension last year? But they know the kind of player that he is and the value that he can bring, and I mean we've certainly seen that this season.
Yeah, and again, talk about depth. I mean, you just look down at the names on this roster, and it's just like, psh, yeah, they're fine. Like,
Yeah,
like,
they're
how many centers do you have with 4+ goals? It's like, oh, like 17. Okay.
yeah, definitely one of those sleeping giants that we've seen, and we'll get to that a little bit later with Vegas and the Pacific, where
Hmm.
not the hottest start, but so much talent, that they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, and Arizona already 6 wins. RJ, 14 points. I mean, that's pretty impressive for them. Like what
Given
are they
that
doing?
roster, absolutely. Louis Erickson carrying the team, driving the bus.
Yeah, I mean, a lot. What has been funny is a lot of those guys, a lot of those contract dumps on that team. Like they are feeling it. It's kind of funny to
They're
watch.
motivated.
They really are. And only minus 53 goal differential. That's it.
Hmm.
It's pretty solid. Winnipeg, you consider them kind of a disappointment so far?
I suppose so. this is kind of what they do, though, as we've talked about in previous podcasts.
Yeah.
They're never all that impressive at this point in the regular season. They kind of turn it on later in the season and then look a little better than they did early on. But yeah, I think they'll be all right. There's enough talent there, to turn it around. But with the coaching change and everything, with Paul Maurice being out, we'll see what kind of changes they decide to turn to for the rest of the season.
Yeah. The bottom line takeaway from the Central Division is like, wow, what a mediocre division. Like, everybody is going to be slightly above 500 at the end of the year.
Right. I mean, I think that's a result also of just the division being kind of so competitive and so closely lumped together skill wise. Like Colorado, Minnesota, those aren't teams I would describe as mediocre. I think the Blues also, they're looking a lot better. I think they're out of their kind of post cup win slump, and they're kind of refreshed. They've got some younger names coming in and contributing. So I think they're a team to watch out for as well. So I do think they have some contenders there, but just because there's so many of them, points wise, it's not going to look too impressive.
No, and it's just probably going to be the funnest playoff race to watch. Like, in division playoff race, it'll be fun. Last but certainly not least, RJ, the Pacific Division. I mean, we've talked about the Kraken ad nauseum, but got to bring it up. 7 points behind Vancouver at the bottom of this division. Not where we thought the Kraken would be at all.
No, I mean, that's arguably the biggest surprise in the division, and there's some other big surprises. But yeah, I don't think anyone anticipated that the Kraken would be necessarily this bad. All the models, everything showed that they were somewhere between an 85 and a 95 point team, and that is certainly not the pace they're on. And so, Dylan, question for you, and I know we've talked about the Kraken ad nauseum, but like, we predicted this would be like a 90-something point team.
Yeah.
Looking at the reality now, if you had like gone back, to you at the start of the season and be like, okay, this is where they are, like, what would be the number one reason where you're just like, okay, well, that's why it didn't happen. Well, that's why they weren't good.
As far as like what I would have guessed, or what I would say now?
What you would have guessed if you had just known they're not going to be as good. Like, what happened? What do you think would have happened?
I mean, I guess the easy answer would have been injuries. Like, I would have been like, oh, okay, the whole team must have gotten hurt. Like, both goaltenders were down, all that stuff, I guess. Because legitimately looking at the roster, seeing what kind of roster it was, guessing at the play style, which obviously has been the big reason, I think, why it hasn't happened, I would have been like, oh, it would have had to have been injuries. Little did I know they wouldn't be able to buy a save. Defense would not play well defensively, despite everybody supposedly being good at it, or at least being good at it in all their previous places. New goal scoring was going to be an issue, but wow, it's just still been surprising.
Yep, everything so different than our team preview video. Yep, but elsewhere in the division,
yes,
also some other surprises.
Yeah, so Vegas finally turned it on. No surprise there. Knew that was going to happen. Anaheim, though, wow. I mean, we both had them to finish last in the division.
We did.
Mentioned they have a lot of names. They were banged up last year. They were going to be better this year than they were last year. Knew they had young guys coming in, but it was also like they've had, guys like Troy Terry on this roster for a year and a half already. Hadn't done anything. Certainly did not expect him to come in all of a sudden magically have the best shot in the league and just go crazy.
I can't believe what we've seen from Troy Terry. Like, I watched him. We both watched a fair amount of him last year, the year before. I don't know where this player was, but it's incredible what he's done. He's just so dangerous with that shot. And I thought it might slow down after kind of a hot start to the season. It's not slowing down at all. I just think this is what he is now.
Yeah, I mean, 24% shooting percentage, probably not sustainable. That's a little out there. But seeing his shot in person multiple times now, it's legit, and he is going to be a sniper in this league for a while now. It's just kind of crazy. 24. Usually you see some hint of it beforehand. It's not even like he hasn't played with legit guys on this team even before. Like, they've given him chances before and it just hasn't been there. But it's obviously clicking now, figured it out. good for him, good for the Ducks, I guess. Not happy that it's in the division, but what are you gonna do? Zegras, though, being the Zegras that everybody kind of predicted all along, that's not a surprise. But then you look at their next two high scorers tied at 21 points, Sonny Milano and Ryan Getzlaf, just like we predicted, right? They'd be great assets to this Ducks team. Go figure.
Yep, Getzlaf finding the fountain of youth, giving him his game back, not his hair back, but his game back. And Sonny Milano. I mean, he was kind of banged up last season. We were talking about him as a potential expansion draft pick. He was exposed.
Yeah.
And then, I think, it helps having some line mates as well who are playing better now.
Yes.
But another guy who just kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, developed great chemistry with Trevor Zegras, and that's obviously helped. And Sonny Milano, it's easy now with hindsight, can look back, not the greatest of developmental situations for who he was, the style of player he was, and the coaching that they had in Columbus at the time. You could see why maybe he would be more of a late bloomer now, figuring things out in a different system with different players. But it'll be interesting. Is this going to be just like a Chris Kunitz, Pascal Dupuis playing with Sidney Crosby type thing, where they have fantastic chemistry with this absolute great player, and that's kind of really what's driving it? Or is this just kind of the Sonny Milano that showed he was a super skilled player way back in the day going into his draft class? It'll be interesting to see. But at the end of the day, Ducks teams have always been built around depth on defense, and this year that's showing up as everybody's healthy.
Yep, it makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, just a little. And then you lose John Gibson, but Anthony Stolarz of all people. What's a very similar kind of path to what, like Jack Campbell, some of these guys, right? They just top prospect type people, flame out where they were originally, kind of disappear for a year or two, pop back up as a backup somewhere else, and magically they found their game at 28 years old.
And I like Anthony Stolarz too. I mean, he's always had the size. He's always kind of had that big goalie frame, and his underlying numbers too in the AHL have been good. He's someone I looked at, again, as potential expansion draft pick for the Kraken out of Anaheim, and I'm like, all the numbers here suggest that he's ready for at least an NHL backup role, maybe someone who could even be part of a tandem, and he's played kind of according to that so far. So I mean, great start for him.
Yeah, I just remember trying to force it in Philadelphia with him.
Yes.
And it just was never going to work. Now, again, kind of like with Sonny Milano, easy to look back and just be like, well, no one was ever going to work in Philadelphia as a goaltender. So, maybe that had something to do with it. But it is always interesting, some of those top goalie prospects, how just because they're labeled a bust and the team has to move on from them at some point doesn't mean that they can't pop up a few years later and make things happen. Calgary, you were far more on the Calgary train than I was coming into this season, and boy, were you right. Although, the depth of scoring on this team is a little surprising.
Yeah, never doubt Daryl Sutter. Never doubt a Daryl Sutter team. They will find ways to score as much as they need to when they need to, even if it's from guys like Andrew Mangiapane.
Yeah, or Milan Lucic, 7 goals. Go figure.
Lucic and Sutter, man, it worked. It worked for one season in LA.
Yep. It's kind of wild. I mean, they have some depth of scoring. Like I said, it's coming from some surprising guys at unsustainable rates. But at the same time, I'm back on board with you. You just can't doubt Sutter and what he can get out of goaltenders. I mean, .931 team save percentage is pretty remarkable, and it doesn't seem like that's going to go away anytime soon either.
No, I mean, it would look unsustainable on the surface, but you look at his history with teams, and it's really just that they play a certain way defensively to support their goalies. You obviously need the goaltender to step up and do his part of that. But with that defensive structure that Eddie Daryl Sutter team is going to have, it gives the goalies every opportunity to do that, and more often than not, they step up.
Exactly. Edmonton doing their thing. I don't know that there's a contender yet, though. Like, no, it's just I don't see it.
they live and die on, these shooting percentage benders from their superstars, which, unlike any other team, they can actually do and be okay because of the level of superstars they have. But it's a team that certainly, over the last couple weeks with this losing streak they've been on, have showed that, they're not a kind of a fundamentally sound built team. And they're very volatile, but sometimes that can get you success in the playoffs, over a short sample size. But I don't know. There's too many weaknesses there still.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe Zach Hyman didn't come in and just fix all of their problems.
That was the only issue, right?
I thought that's what, was gonna happen. They got rings in the room now. Duncan Keith. What's going on? I don't get it. Yeah, no, this team looks exactly like we'd expect they would. It's unbelievable looking at their cap friendly page. Like, just where certain dollars are allocated as far as return on those dollars is kind of crazy. But
it's funny because I remember looking at the Oilers cap friendly page, God, it must have been 5 years ago with you. And because we gave ourselves a challenge. We sat down one day because this is what we do for fun because we're weird.
Yeah.
We sat down one day, both of us, with the Oilers cap friendly page. We're like, all right, what would you do if you were the GM? How do you fix this? And just go step by step. How do you fix this? And I think we both came to the agreement that there were just so many bad contracts on the books. It started with waiting 3 years.
Yeah.
Like, you have to wait 3 years before anything you can realistically do. And at that point, you can kind of use the space. And here we are, at least 3 years, maybe 5 years later, and you look around and it's kind of a similar situation.
It's somehow worse, I think. Like,
at least the Koskinen contract is almost off the books. That's one of the ones we were saying we had to wait for.
Yeah, there was just no way to deal with it. But it's wild. This is one of those teams, like, there's always some teams where it's just like, how do they have seemingly more money than anybody else? Vancouver's always been kind of that team. It's like, how do they just have all these contracts? It makes no sense. And Edmonton is kind of that way now, and is certainly going to be that way moving forward for the next little bit. And it's just, they're going to go as far as Draisaitl and McDavid can drag the rest of the team to some respect. And, I love guys like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. They have other good players, don't get me wrong. Darnell Nurse is really good. But the depth is not there. I just don't see anything about this team that's going to lead to playoff success. Goaltending, I mean, what? You're just going to keep... How long are you going to ride Mike Smith as your best goaltender?
Philly's 50.
I guess so.
50. Keep it going.
Get him on the TB12 diet. Get him going.
Yep. I really think their best chance at winning a cup with this core is just that Stuart Skinner comes in and just gets really hot for a month.
Yeah. But even that, I don't know that it's sustainable. We've seen
you don't want to build your
no.
on that.
I just mean, like, I don't even know that he could get hot for long enough. Like, we've seen such up and down play from him. Even
it's
just
goaltending. I never rule anything out. But
that's true. And I guess just to kind of finish it up, we talked a lot about Vancouver last week on the podcast, given all their changes. I don't know how sustainable it's going to be long term for the rest of this regular season, and they got a little bit of a hole to dig themselves out of. San Jose and LA though, punch it above their weight, seems like.
Yeah, they are. I mean, the Kings are doing better than I thought. I remember you were more on the Kings train than I was, and it's impressive despite, because they've had some absences. Really, I mean, Quentin Byfield. That was a huge bummer for them, losing him, right at the start of the season.
Yeah.
They haven't even had him to contribute. And how about Jonathan Quick? He's back.
He's totally back. Who definitely the thing I did not see coming, more so than anything else in the NHL, I think, would be Jonathan Quick coming in, .930 save percentage. And with an 18-game sample size, it's not like, oh, he played 2 games and then hurt himself again. Like, it's he's actually getting that done, and that's crazy for them. I mean, good for them. But yes, a lot of the reason I was high on the Kings this year when a lot of other people weren't was around the young guys coming in and giving them this like influx of skill and depth and all of this stuff, and that actually hasn't really been the reason for their success this year. So I was completely wrong about why they'd be successful. despite the fact that they are, kind of as successful as I thought they'd be. I think I had them finishing maybe fourth in the division, kind of with Calgary fourth, fifth, or Vancouver, I mean.
Right.
Yeah, it's been interesting. That being said, some of the young guys are still in there getting some stuff done. But yeah, Byfield's, whenever he gets back,
It's going to be a huge boost for them.
Yeah, it could be the thing that kind of pushes them over the top as far as, maybe stealing a wild card spot.
Absolutely. They just need to hang in there, till kind of that home stretch to get Byfield back. And then, that should be their ticket. As for the Sharks, I want to talk about them real quick because I can cling to being exactly right about them here. They're doing exactly what I thought they would. They are on pace to finish 9th or 10th in the West, one of the top non-playoff spots, the worst place to be. They are definitely much improved over last season, but not nearly as improved enough to go to the playoffs.
No.
So, yeah, they are in the worst spot, and just remain in denial and doing the worst thing for the organization.
Yep, it's crazy what getting some saves will do to a team.
That's all it's been.
That's all it's been. It's pretty remarkable.
Credit to James Reimer.
Yeah, Erik Karlsson's coming back. I mean,
he's getting points.
That's big. Yeah, he's getting points. Yeah. It's that's all you can ask from him, I guess, at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Really, the thing to look for is just continue to develop the young guys, get them going, and at some point you just got to make a call on Hurdle, Meyer, figure out what the long-term plan is. That's going to
be a difficult decision. We'll see at the trade deadline what they do.
Yeah, because talk about contracts for several more years weighing a team down. Sharks got some doozies still.
Yep.
All right, so that does it for standings. I think that went pretty good. So let's move over to statistical leaders and stuff. Just kind of talk more so about some individual performances that maybe we didn't touch on as we went team by team there. You look at something like goals, like looking at the counting stats first before we get into anything analytical. Big surprise, McDavid Draisaitl tied for first in points, right? Like,
yeah, who saw that coming?
Certainly no one. Can't imagine how horrible the odds are every year in Vegas, like for prop bets on that. But third in points, kind of really the only person keeping pace with them, Alex Ovechkin. Like,
love to see it.
Absolutely love to see it. Fantastic year for Ovechkin, 22 goals. We know he's chasing Gretzky. He signed that contract with, it's very much laid out for him to kind of get around Gretzky right around when that contract's up. Probably, retire at the end of that if he does get to Gretzky. And, talk about ageless wonders. It's Alex Ovechkin. He's remarkably aged better than any of those other guys of kind of his generation, all those stars, which is nuts when you think about how he played for so long.
Yes, he would always play very physically, and that was what we were talking about as far as his potential to break Gretzky's record as well. His body's just going to break down, right? He's not going to age he's not going to age well given how he's played, and yet he's just aging better than anyone else. I don't know, having that kind of size, that just that thickness in the body, like, I guess it'll do you well. But it's just incredible what he's been able to do this season, not just even from a goal scoring perspective, but he's racking up assists. He's just generating offense nonstop in a way that very few players of his age have been able to do. I mean, he's 36.
Yeah.
What other 36-year-olds in league history have we seen do something like this? It's very rare. So he's certainly off to a great start in this contract as far as catching Gretzky. Let's see, Ovechkin's got 752 goals, Gretzky at 894. That's 143 to beat him.
Yeah,
do the math. People have done the math, but he's off to a good start.
Yeah, and the fact that he's shooting over 15% for the third time in 4 years. Like, that's crazy.
Yep.
Like,
you look at that for any other player and you just think they're on a shooting percentage bender. This is unsustainable. But no, this is just who this guy is. This is who Ovechkin is.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy that as he's gotten older, obviously the goal scoring has stayed consistent for him, which is one thing into of itself. but his save percentage is actually getting better. Gone are the days where he's like blowing everybody out of the water in shots taken, where it's just like a pure volume thing. Like he's gotten better about
What
just
is up with us today? You said save percentage. This is like
shooting
three
percent.
times.
God, wow.
That's just
You're
we
right.
can't
Yeah.
get that today.
I don't get it either. But yes, it's kind of crazy because I mean he's leading in shots this year, but you look at the last couple of years, not quite the volume that you're used to seeing from him. He's picking his spots a little better, and yes, you're seeing it this year with the assists. I mean, he's got more assists than goals. When was the last time that happened? Has it ever happened? I'm looking at his page. It hasn't. I don't think it's happened since 2010, 2011 that he's had more assists than
Wow.
goals. So, yeah. Oh no, 2016, 2017. He had 3 more assists than goals. But again, it's kind of crazy. He's really taken it upon himself to be the offense for Washington this year, be a little bit more of a complete offensive player. And I think that's opening up windows for himself. He is evolving as he needed to as he got older, right? Like that was part of the question. You can't play as reckless and aggressive as you did when you were young. I know Russian machine never break, but like it's one of those things, and we're seeing the evolution from him, and it's awesome.
That's one of the most amazing things to watch in a sport is seeing players who, with age, kind of have to reinvent their games a little
Hmm.
bit, and the great ones being able to do it so well. I
Hmm.
mean, just being alive in the time that we have, we've been so lucky to see that. Tom Brady kind of changing how he's played
Hmm.
a little bit. Tiger Woods is another one. Couldn't
Hmm.
just go with the ball with as much power. And now Alex Ovechkin. It's just great to see.
Yeah, and unlike the other two, Ovechkin never really went away either.
Yeah,
Like you can point
that's
to
true.
stretches for the other two where it's like, okay, they were trying to do it, still couldn't, and then it took them a year or two to figure it out or deal with stuff. And with Ovechkin, it's been pretty seamless. As he starts running into problems, he's kind of adjusting on the fly to it. It's been cool. Evgeny Malkin's been doing a similar thing in Pittsburgh. He's just crushed by injuries year after year, and it's frustrating to see. But yes, Ovechkin, the ageless wonder, it's awesome. Uh, Otherwise, looking at goals, I mean, one of the surprising things, what Austin Matthews only 20 goals, dude. What? Come on, step it up.
Third in the league. Come on, you're better than that.
Yeah, come on. Kyle Connor, it seems like is he ever gonna get recognized as like a great shooter?
Not as long as he's in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
I feel like, as even though it's a Canadian market, I don't know. Players are just so underrated that do well there.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, he's a fantastic player and has been for a while now. But yeah, he's doing well again.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like Winnipeg players, it's like, well, they're on Winnipeg. Like, there's all these good players, and it's like this team or whatever. And yet, Winnipeg every year will be like slightly above 500. It's like, well, no, it can't be both things. Where they're an above average team, but not a good team or a great team. But any player's statistical performance is just, well, they're on Winnipeg. Like, that explains it. And it's like, well, no, it kind of doesn't actually. Um, Alex DeBrincat, like why do guys like him fall in drafts? I don't understand it.
Oh, we could have a whole long conversation about that.
I
Um,
know it's crazy to me. It's that age old. Yes, you've performed at every level so far, but you just can't do it here. Like why? Why do we still think that way? Especially as the league has moved away, moved towards being faster and less physical in some ways. It's still mind blowing to me that GMs think that way. But good for Alex DeBrincat for
Imagine if the Oilers took him. I think what it was like 10 picks earlier. They took
yeah.
Tyler Benson instead,
Oh my
reunite him with
gosh.
McDavid.
Yeah, that would have been nuts. Would have been crazy. But Alex DeBrincat, hero for all the short guys like us. It's awesome to see. Um, Otherwise, goal scoring wise, not too many surprises. We already talked about Andrew Mangiapane. Dylan Larkin having a good year. I think that's one thing we missed when we talked about briefly talked about Detroit. Dylan Larkin's back. Didn't
Yes.
didn't see that coming.
No, I certainly didn't. But good for him. I mean,
Hmm.
he's stuck it out through a lot of tough years in
Yeah,
Detroit, and he's been a leader for that team. And I think he's getting some of that good fortune that he deserves.
yeah. Moving over. Let's see, points wise, not too many things stand out. JT Miller's been incredible for Vancouver recently. I'm happy for him. Uh, kind of bounced around a little bit throughout his career, looking for a spot. That being said, he's been consistently good in the past. I don't know why team like he's kind of like the perfect second line center, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and when the Canucks traded for him, I criticized the trade at the time just because I didn't think it fit where they were at, giving
Mm-hmm.
away a first round pick. But as far as identifying a player that's on the market that makes sense for just about any team where you can slot him in, I mean, he certainly works in that regard. I think he's a fit just about anywhere.
Yeah. And then looking at just kind of sticking with the counting stats for a second before we move over to analytics, Adam Fox keeping it going offensively. Like,
Mm-hmm.
didn't see it coming. I'll be honest. I thought he was going to kind of be a 1 year wonder type thing, but proven me wrong.
And he's a guy who I was very interested to see when the Rangers came to Seattle to play the Kraken.
Mm-hmm.
I went to that game and I kind of kept an eye on Fox pretty much the whole game because I didn't watch a whole lot of him last season, being in the Eastern Conference and everything, and him not being someone who was, anywhere in the conversation for an expansion draft pick or anything.
Yeah.
So I didn't watch a whole bunch of him. But seeing him in that game in Seattle, he was just thoroughly impressive, both offensively and defensively. The number of times that, even if I wasn't clued in on him, that I would have noticed him making good play. So no, after that game, I was like, yeah, he's legit.
Yeah, and I watched probably more of him last year than you did. And what's interesting is last year it felt very much like he was being productive based off of like just his instincts and stuff. And this year he's playing with confidence and he's like, oh yeah, I can make this happen. Like I'm seeing a lot more assertiveness from him, a lot more of a take charge kind of role, and he's really driving things this year for the Rangers in a bigger way than even he did last year. And obviously he was very successful last year, so definitely scary for the rest of the league there. All right. So do you want to talk kind of analytic stuff for skaters before we move on to goaltending? Anything standing out
Yeah.
to you in that sense?
Yeah, let's do this. And I'm on Hockey Reference here, and I've just kind of sorted by, I think we prefer Fenwick to Corsi, the two of
Mm-hmm.
us.
Yeah,
And sorted by Fenwick for percentage, scrolling down past all the guys who've just played one game.
I know.
We see Dominic Simone in Pittsburgh. Now I know you, and Drew O'Connor also in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're more of a Penguins guy than I am. Anything to say about those two guys? Because I don't really have a whole lot of a book on those two.
No, not too much. Again, haven't seen a ton of Pittsburgh this year. Watching so much Kraken. Pittsburgh, in a lot of ways, like that whole team is kind of surprising to the upside. A lot of their depth guys, a lot of that stuff hasn't totally led to the team success that you would maybe think when you have like all these guys playing well above kind of their expectations and career levels. But no, I mean they're all just playing well, and I think the system that the Penguins are using this year, we saw it when they played the Kraken. They are aggressive. Their defensemen are aggressive. The forwards are aggressive at driving the net, applying a lot of pressure onto other teams. And I think that just that amount of pressure and kind of sustained pressure, but also we're going to drive to the net and just get shots off and all that stuff. It helps pad those advanced stats a little bit. And I think that's partly what you're seeing there is just the style of game that the Penguins have put together for this year lends itself to, showing up in things like this.
And I've got to add another name there that's just right a little bit further down. Evan Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Also part of that line.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you kind of see at the top here. And there's another line here, one that we would probably more expect, and that is Boston's perfection line. You've got
Yes.
Patrice Bergeron, David Pastrnak, and Brad Marchand all right up there in that conversation. I don't think there's anything really that we need to say about about that line. We know what they bring. We know what they do. It's just that simple. If you've watched them play, it shouldn't be a surprise to you.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's see. Moving on. Should we look at like worst Fenwick for percentage?
Yeah, we could do that.
I'm just seeing if there's any names that really stand out where you'd think they'd be better.
Not too many. It's
right,
usual suspects, guys.
Hey, there's Ryan Reeves.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's not
that
as
one
that's not
no,
his
it's not
role.
a surprise. Yeah.
Kind of a lot of Rangers actually, as you start looking at it.
Yeah, weirdly enough. I mean, they're they've got a good record, but
Again,
some of those guys lower there.
maybe not sustainable there. That's for sure.
All right, so I love this one. I'm gonna sort by offensive zone starts.
Barclay
See
Goodrow.
who's the most sheltered guys.
Yeah.
So looking at we've got Scott Perunovich in St. Louis, but that's not too interesting. Top guys here that have played more than 15 games: Sonny Milano and Trevor Zegras.
Yeah, and it makes sense. Obviously, if you're the Ducks and you have young center like Trevor Zegras, you want to put him in the best position to succeed when he doesn't have to be your top guy, right? Getzlaf is still there and producing at a very high level still, so you can put him still in the situations where you need maybe someone a little bit more defensively responsible, all that stuff. But this is what ideally you want to do when you have a young potential star center, is ease them into things, get them comfortable, build up confidence, all that stuff. I will say the difference between Zegras, the first game against the Kraken that we saw, and then this most recent game, he is back checking a lot more. He is playing a lot more defensively. I think that is something that we'll continue to see from him as the season goes on, and maybe you'll see this offensive zone start number come down a little bit just as he gets more comfortable. The game starts slowing down, all of that stuff. But this is just a luxury the Ducks have of being able to send him out there in those spots and not have to force things on him too quick. And that's kind of similar to what I thought we'd see from Quentin Byfield in Los Angeles this year too. Ease him in as a third line center, because you've got Kopitar and you've got my guy that they signed.
Philip Deneau.
Philip Deneau. He can handle everything defensively. Kopitar, obviously one of the best two-way centers. Really probably of all time at this point. You could start saying like he's one of the greats. And so Byfield, you can just kind of throw out there in offensive situations, build confidence, get him used to the league. So I think this shows, yes, the Ducks are sheltering Zegras, but it's because they can't afford to.
And one more guy I want to throw out here because he was up here last season too. Elias Patterson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
now,
and
he's a little bit older than a Zegras type, and I don't know, is that still kind of the way that you would deploy him? He's very creative offensively, like a Zegras. Is that the right usage, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen a ton of the two-way stuff from him really ever. He is offensively minded, and I do think that you want to do that certainly this year as you're looking to really get him going again after the last little bit where things have been in flux for him. Hasn't been great, hasn't been as good as at least we know he can be, or as we've seen him be, as we expect him to be. So I think that is probably smart on Vancouver's point of view. Don't totally have the ability to shelter him in the same way the Ducks do with Zegras, but I get it. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, I understand it too, and it's at least his numbers now are good with that sheltering, because last season, I mean, he'd have some of the worst, Fenwick numbers you'd see in the league despite that. So, at least he's turned it around there. I want to go to one thing that I noticed. So even strength time on ice, this isn't really too analytical. It's just, another counting stat, but I found something interesting. Sorting by most even strength time on ice, you've got the usual suspects of, Thomas Chabot, Darnell Nurse, Zach Werenski up top. But looking at number 10 on the list, Jake Bean in Columbus.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it when the Kraken played Columbus. They are using Jake Bean. They are making the most of him. Obviously, we talked about him a lot leading into the expansion draft. He kind of seemed like the pick from Carolina before, obviously, Ron Francis went with Morgan Geekie, which has worked out pretty well, I'd say. But we knew Jake Bean was just a victim of Carolina's incredible depth along the blue line. Like he had well earned this kind of ability to show what he can do at the NHL level and get a lot of ice time. And so getting it here in Columbus, I'm not too surprised that in Columbus, I mean, they don't have an insanely deep blue line like they need.
They don't. Yeah, and certainly going through kind of the mini rebuild, I don't know what you want to call it, but kind of reshuffling of things in Columbus, they've leaned on him heavily, and I think looking back at that pick, you really just couldn't go wrong between either of the two. So, yeah, that's kind of the story with Jake Bean. let's see. What other stats to look at? Oh yeah, do they have shooting percentage on here? On ice shooting percentage. Let's take a look at that. Mikko
Okay.
Rantanen, number one with 18.6 on ice shooting percentage. You got also JT Compher and Gabriel Landeskog in 2 at 3. But that's a line where you think maybe not that high is sustainable, but you've got some reason, why it might be that high.
Exactly. I think of anything where you're looking at, hey, is this sustainable? It's like, okay, yeah, it's probably sustainable for Ovechkin not far behind, and it's probably sustainable for that group because it's what do you do defending it? Like you can't defend it.
Yep, you've got other Colorado. You've got Nazem Kadri and Nichushkin there,
Yeah.
right up in the list, and then of course Ovechkin, Stamkos, Riley Sheahan.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually not surprising if you think about it with Riley Sheahan, watching him in Seattle. Like I believe it. The way they've been getting the most out of their bottom two lines, really, a lot of the season.
Yeah, for sure. Um, let's see. How much stock do you, I'm just curious, how much stock do you put into takeaways and giveaways?
Not a ton. I mean, maybe at the end of a year when you're looking at the absolute largest sample size.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that's one of those things that your your line mates and the team around you can play a big part in.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I'm just seeing some of the takeaway names. Petrangelo, Uyghur, Stone, Nylander. It makes it the giveaways. Seeing Brent Burns at number 2 on the giveaways list makes me think, oh, maybe there's something to this.
Yeah, maybe just a little. All
Um,
right.
yeah, that's what we got for the skaters.
Yeah, so moving on to goalies, looking at the, kind of traditional stuff, save percentage, goals against average. Freddie Anderson, big part of why Carolina's doing what they can do. Obviously, playing behind that blue line, playing behind that team, the defensive system that they have, you could almost plug in anybody and they're going to be successful. But Freddie Anderson, a little bit of a fire under him after everything that happened in Toronto, and playing extremely well for Carolina, and I don't see any reason for it to stop anytime soon.
No, I don't either, except for the fact he was just put on the COVID list. But
Wow.
yeah, once he gets back.
Who
Um,
isn't
but
on the
yeah,
COVID list?
okay, fair enough, fair enough. Yeah, as long as the league's still going. Um, yeah, no, he's been fantastic for Carolina, and he's been a big part of their success. You just needed a goalie who was going to come in and provide that stability and even be as impressive as he have. When you get a team thank you. When you get a team that's that good in front of a goalie and the goalie playing at the top of his game, you get the Hurricanes who were at the top points percentage. Got it.
Yes.
In the league. Yeah, it's been a great fit.
Yeah, and I just don't see any reason for it to stop or slow down as the season
Yep.
goes on. We talked a
I even
little.
started stumbling as I got close to the points percentage thing. Just get a sentence out, and
I know,
you
I
fall
know.
apart.
Yes, and now we are actually talking about save percentage. I'm sure we'll both
Okay.
start calling it shooting percentage for some reason. Um, Shesterkin we talked about earlier, like incredible. He just eye test wise and through a lot of numbers too, looks like the best goalie in the league right now.
For sure. He's another guy who I was kind of clued into on that Rangers Kraken
Mm-hmm.
game in Seattle, and Shesterkin stole that one.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it was the Shesterkin and Fox show that whole
Yeah.
game, really. But yeah, he's just been excellent, and there was so much hype around him too before he'd even
Mm-hmm.
played for the Rangers, and he has lived up to that, in every way.
Yeah, and just incredible style of playing. Like,
Fun.
it's really fun, kind of unlike anything I've seen. It's somehow efficient while being like on the edge. It's really really interesting and fun to see. Uh, Interesting guy, kind of high on the list for both of these. Tristan Jari. And it's like it just feels like again maybe benefiting from this Penguins aggressive style this year, not having to see a bunch of shots, and the shots he's seeing are kind of easy, quick from the perimeter a little more so as teams are just trying to get something going, trying to penetrate the blue line. But it's also it's a Pittsburgh goalie. We'll see what you do in April, May.
Exactly. Yeah, and again, he's another bit of evidence for the whole you never know what you're going to get with goalies thing. Um, you know, Hearing the talk about him last year's playoffs. He pretty much cost them that series.
Yeah.
Almost single-handedly cost them that playoff
Yeah.
series. Can they get rid of him? What can they do?
Mm-hmm.
I guess the Penguins were, might have even been lucky that after that they probably couldn't have gotten rid of him if they wanted to, because he's turned it around in a major way.
Yeah. Markstrom, again, it's the Calgary effect. It's the Sutter effect. That's what it is.
Doesn't fail.
It does not. Let's see. You talked about Reimer, incredible for San Jose right now. Absolutely incredible. Talked about Stolars and Quick. Vasilevsky, year in, year out, just killing it, like always.
Yeah, he's the exception of the you never know what you're going to get from goalies rule. He's just going to be fantastic every year, and that's it. End of story.
Yep, that is just it. So that's kind of it as far as goaltending goes. It's some interesting guys up there along with the usual suspects, so to speak.
Yep. Can we look at goals saved above expected?
Yes.
Because yes, you got Anderson, Jonathan Quick at number 2. Love that. Jack Campbell at number 4. He's done well with Toronto this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Vasilevsky, Jari up there. I want to look at the bottom though, because that's always the most interesting, I think, to look at. And I'm sorry, we've got to mention this, but far and away the lowest goals saved above expected, almost double the second guy. So Philip Grubauer, minus 20 goals saved above expected. Carter Hutton at number 2 with minus 10.3, almost double.
It's incredible. Like I didn't know it was possible to kind of be that bad. Like, but it's there. And again, watching these Kraken games, it's understandable.
Right, you see it every game. I mean, we've watched every Kraken game, every minute of every Kraken game,
because it
makes sense.
Yeah, he's getting hit with the double whammy of poor defense that's allowing high danger chances and other teams to be put in really good positions to score, and they are because of the poor defense, and leaky goalie just not making saves you should be making. And that's kind of why it's double anybody else, is because it's the only one where you have both negatives coming together into this like perfect package for bad goaltending right now. And it's just unfortunate that it's Philip Grubauer, but talk about a fall from grace from last year. It's insane
for sure. And I mean, you might want to blame the defense alone, but you look at even like the Arizona goalies, Carter Hutton, and Karel Vejmelka. Combine them at their minus 17. They're kind of up there, and that's about as bad of a defensive team in front of you as you can have. It's just not good. And I'm looking at last season as well, because I wanted a reference point here.
Mm-hmm.
Who was the worst last season? It was Carter Hart at minus 24. Grubauer's almost there.
I know. He's only played 23 games. It's nuts. Others, real quick, another surprise kind of down at the bottom, Spencer Knight.
Mm-hmm.
That's surprising to me, especially considering the team playing in front of him.
It is, but you can always point to just being a younger goalie. What is he, still 20?
Yeah.
He's 21 now.
Yeah.
Either way, you can have some bumps in the road for young goalies. We've seen it before plenty of times. I mean, heck, it was just impressive that he was even at the NHL level at age 20 playing playoff games. Mm-hmm. Most goalies can't do that. But yeah, I think he was sent down even to Charlotte, because mm-hmm. the Kraken and the Florida Panthers share an AHL affiliate, the Charlotte Checkers. And I remember seeing a notification from them the other day, like Spencer Knight makes his Charlotte Checkers debut tonight. Like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah, like what?
But I guess that would explain it.
Yeah, and then someone else kind of struggling, whether you're looking at advanced stats or traditional stats, Robin Lehner. Mm-hmm. Not a great year for Robin Lehner. Vegas has turned it around, but Lehner's still struggling there. And it's kind of one of those where you can see why, watching the Vegas Knights games that we've seen. The defense does put the goalie in rough situations at times. Like, it is the goalie's job to be the last line of defense. Like, that's kind of their style of play is, go ahead, make an athletic save for us. Like, that's your job. And that worked great for someone like Flower, but seeing not so quite for someone with the style of a Robin Lehner.
Yeah, and you can kind of see that defensive style of, hey, make an athletic save for us in the difference between, his save percentage of, 904, 905, which,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's lower than you'd want to see, but he's still saved, 4.5 goals above expected. So when you take, the shot difficulty into account, it makes the numbers look a little bit better, but he certainly hasn't been up to, his standard and what everyone's kind of expected from him this season. Thankfully for him, the team in front of him has just been so good
Yeah.
that it hasn't even mattered. I mean, they're at the top of the Pacific Division now, despite, not really getting the goaltending that they've wanted to get. So that's another reason I just think Vegas seems like such a contender for the Stanley Cup, is if they can just get the goaltending figured out, even with the goaltending as bad as it's been, having just about all your key players injured at some point during the season,
Yes.
not even having your future number one center in the lineup for a single game, and you're still like cruising to the top of the Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's just so many more gears this team has that they can hit.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, but again, we'll see come playoff time, because they have officially entered that territory of, until you do it, I'm going to be skeptical, and that's just the way it is. Like, they haven't earned my, just, yeah, they're amazing and they're going to get it done this year. Like, you got to see it. They've entered Sharks territory. They've entered the Penguins after like 2011 territory, where it was just like, you got to do it.
They can do it, but until they show you.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and finish off this podcast with let's just do like a prediction for the finals, and who we think, based on what we've seen so far this year, is going to win the Stanley Cup. Okay? So finals, who do you got? Who do you think's going to make the Stanley Cup final, and who do you think's going to win it?
All right, for the finals, I have the final that the NHL kind of played right before the shutdown. I was serious about that. I was dead serious. Tampa, Vegas. Tampa, they're kind of the opposite, where until you show me something that shows me you can't get it done,
Mm-hmm.
I have to believe that you will, as far as getting to the final. They're the defending 2-time Stanley Cup champions. There doesn't seem like there's any kind of a hangover there. And they just keep getting contributions from new, younger guys in the lineup too. They just seem to have this prospect pool that can endlessly replenish guys that they've been missing or had to ship out. So Tampa in the East, and Vegas in the West. I've talked enough about them. Everyone listening should know why I think they're going to make the Cup final, and I think they're going to win.
Okay. Bold prediction. In the East, it is tempting to go with Tampa, but I'm going to go Carolina, because I think this year they don't have to face the Florida teams on their way to, going deep into the playoffs. I think this is the most depth of scoring we've seen from them, of this kind of era for the Hurricanes, and I think that's going to be the ultimate difference for them, is having that scoring when they kind of need it. Having a very high team shooting percentage, maybe too high. We'll see. But I think the Freddie Anderson difference, the goaltending difference, maybe making up for some of the lack on the blue line that they've had in years past. But I think it was all smart trade-offs to add more scoring, add more consistent scoring from guys. And I think that's going to make a difference for this Carolina team come playoff time. Kotkaniemi's going to get hot, just like he did for the Canadians last year. It's going to be the difference just to drive Montreal insane. I think it's going to be awesome.
And if Freddie Anderson stepped up during the playoffs,
oh my gosh,
that would drive Toronto insane.
Again, just for the pure chaos it would cause to the oldest, most storied, most big-headed franchises and fan bases in the NHL. We should all want this.
It would be a good time.
Yes, and from the West, I'm going to go Colorado, because I think we haven't really seen them at full strength yet, just given the injury situation and everything from them. We're seeing what they can do without it. Really, the thing holding them back at this point, besides the injuries, has been goaltending. We didn't really talk about that earlier. It has not been good. Certainly not for a team at their level. But my guess is at some point they're going to figure it out. They're going to find someone who's going to come in and decide, hey, yeah, I just want to stake claim to this top job. And you guys can kind of, I'll be good enough for a playoff run. And I think that they will. I couldn't tell you for the life of me who it would be out of their group right now. But I think that'll happen generally with teams like this that are, they're going to be good enough to get to the playoffs. And if we haven't seen a goaltender get hot from them yet, means it's coming. Every team goes through one stretch of hot goaltending at some point. They're saving it for the end of the year. That's my idea anyway. But it won't be good enough to beat Carolina. So I think the Carolina Hurricanes, they're my pick for the Stanley Cup over the Colorado Avalanche. I could see every, Colorado Vegas Western Conference final where Colorado just kind of, beats up Vegas. Like, it's just not there. I just have questions on Eichel coming back. I don't know how good he's going to be this year.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, it should be interesting, especially in the West. I think we've each picked teams in the West that the other one thinks is, not as good as the hype, would lead you to believe. I certainly think the Avs are a paper tiger, and as soon as the going gets tough, they're just going to fold. So, but I know you have questions around Vegas too, so it'll be interesting to look back on this come playoff time. And
that's why it'll be like a sweep for Carolina in the finals. I just think I think Colorado can figure it out enough to get through the West this year. That's all. Especially if like their first round playoff matchup is like Nashville or something.
Yeah, they could get around a team like that because it's not going to ever get tough for them, I think.
Right.
But as soon as it does, and I think it will.
I don't know who's going to do it in the West because I don't know that Vegas will again. We'll see. I think they'll try to change their style around Eichel, and it's not going to work.
It's going to be interesting come playoff.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Play this back on repeat all series. So.
Yeah. It's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, thanks so much, everybody, for listening to this. Again, this is kind of more so what we do on these Patreon exclusive podcasts. Talk about the league, talk about really the top stories usually. And boy, the last month or so, there's been a lot of them. We've had a lot of fun doing that. So if you liked this, you like hearing us talk about the league as a whole, check out the Patreon. If you're watching this on YouTube, link will be in the description. Otherwise, it's I believe it's patreon.com, / Emerald City Hockey. Yeah, so really easy to go to. When we post this up on Twitter, everywhere you can find it, we'll make sure to put a link to it as well. So thanks for listening, everybody. Hope everybody that celebrates Christmas has a good Christmas. Hope everybody has a good New Year's. We'll see if when we get back to hockey what things look like and how that goes. But it should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to the rest of the year. Doing this, just looking at all these teams, it's getting me pumped. It's like, yeah, let's get in there. Let's make the push for the playoffs, even though we're not even halfway there yet.
You can do it.
Yep. And clearly, save percentage is the most important thing in the world.
100%. That is the game of goaltending. Is the game of hockey. That's it.
Apparently so. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening so much. We will see you all next time.